to get started, that's fine. Shireen, are you okay to start the recording?
Okay, perfect. Just to note that the public session of the meeting will be recorded and published online after the meeting. I assume you have no problem with that, gentlemen? Okay, thanks. I will just now ask the clerk to advise members participating today and to confirm their attendance information before the direction of the
Okay, members, so if you can just indicate if you're in attendance. So the convener
here.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes, I'm here.
Councillor Allen. Councillor Cook.
Yep, I'm here.
Councillor Copeland.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Councillor Cormie.
Here.
Councillor Gregg.
Present.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Yes, I'm here.
And Councillor Malik.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Gentlemen, if you don't mind just putting off your microphones and your cameras when you're not speaking, and then it just helps with the sound. Thank you. I'll hand back to the convener.
Okay, thanks very much, Lindsay. My screen's just gone blank. Give me one moment. Okay. Right, folks, we're here to listen to a pre-application for a major residential development of up to 150 units with associated landscaping, parking and infrastructure at Leggart Brae, land to the south of the west of Deeside Brae. The proposal application notice references 200638/PAN. I'll hand over to Scott now, who will take us through, and then it'll be passed over to the applicant, and we'll take questions following that. So if everybody else could put their cameras off and mics off, and we'll leave it to Mr.
Okay, thanks for that, convener. I will just now share my screen so you can see the PowerPoint, which is here.
Yes, you put your camera off, please.
Sure.
Thanks. Thank you.
Can you see the PowerPoint now?
No, I can still see you. Oh, I can still
Okay.
just see you. Right, okay. That's it. Thanks, Scott.
That's it. Excellent. Okay. Yes, so item 3 relates to proposal of application notice and the pre-application inquiry received in relation to a major residential development of up to 150 units with associated landscaping, parking and infrastructure. So the site extends to 10.5 hectares and is referred to as Leggart Brae. And the land lies south of the existing Deeside Brae housing development and the South Deeside Road, west of the A92 Stonehaven Road and east of the Causey Mouth Local Road. The western section of the site lies within the Aberdeenshire Council administrative area, around 2.5 hectares of the site, with the remainder within the city boundary. And you can see the administrative boundary just in the dashed yellow line on the plan there. So in the adopted 2017 local development plan, the land is designated as Greenbelt and Green Space Network, and the Den of Leggart is designated as a local nature conservation site. In the proposed local development plan, however, the part of the site that lies within the city boundary is Opportunity Site OP46, allocated for up to 150 homes. The part of the site within Aberdeenshire is Greenbelt in both the adopted and proposed Aberdeenshire local development plans. So to summarise the current LDP position, the development would be contrary to Greenbelt policy. In the proposed local development plan, however, the part of the site within the city is a housing site allocated for this scale of development. The timing and material weight to be given to the proposed LDP is therefore important in the consideration of any subsequent planning application. So further procedural matter. Another important procedural matter relates to the administrative council boundary that runs through the site. So because of this, a planning application will be required to be submitted to each planning authority for the development within their area. This could include, for example, access roads within Aberdeenshire. At this stage, it's indicated that all the housing development would be on land within the city boundary. So aside from matters of principle, there are a number of technical considerations that will require to be addressed through a planning application, including the main vehicular access, whether this is from the east or the west, for example. Also, the landscape impact of the proposals will be required to be carefully addressed, given the topography and relatively prominent nature of the land. Other technical matters that need to be considered will include any necessary developer obligations that could be payable, the preference for 25% of the development to be affordable housing delivered on site, natural heritage considerations, particularly regarding the Den of Legart local nature conservation site, the watercourse that flows through this into the River Dee, given that the River Dee is a special area of conservation. Matters also such as trees, air quality and noise assessments, the development density and drainage considerations will also have to be adequately covered in suitable reports that would form part of the planning application. So following the submission and review of the proposal of application notice, the applicant's agents undertook interactive online consultation earlier this month. It's understood that 3 development options were tabled as part of this, and the results of the public consultation and how this may have influenced any eventual planning application will require to be set out in a pre-application consultation report. So a formal pre-application response has been issued to the applicant's agents now, and next steps with the proposals from the perspective of the planning service will be to continue pre-application discussions prior to any formal planning application submission. And just on the PowerPoint there, the earliest date for an application submission would be the end of this month. And in the report that you have in front of you, there is a list of supporting documents that would be expected to form part of any forthcoming planning application. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Scott. What we'll do now is we'll just hand over now. Is it going to, if you want to introduce yourselves as you speak, we'll hand over to yourself, Angus, I think, and then we'll take questions at the end for either officers or for the applicants. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. I think if that's okay, I'll just take control of the screen and put on our PowerPoint. Can anybody see our presentation yet?
Not yet.
I'll try again.
Yep, good.
Yep.
Yep, got it.
Okay. Okay. Yep, sorry.
I've not got it. Councillor Stewart here. I've not got it.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a blank screen as well.
Okay. I'll try again. Third time lucky. Can people see that now?
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
It's just words on a black screen, but that's the first page. Councillor Stewart here.
Yeah, just the first slide of that PowerPoint. So, okay, Jack, I don't know if I hand over to you.
Hi, everybody. Hello, and thanks for having us. I'm Jack O'Brien. I head up the development team for the Coma Group UK. Coma Homes are an award-winning developer in the UK who also operate in Ireland, Germany, have holdings in wider Europe, the US and Africa. Specialising in high-quality residential schemes with unique flair, often with a heritage element, but we also undertake commercial development too. We're keen to open up opportunities in Scotland. This is our first venture into the country. Our aim is that the Aberdeen acquisition and significant investment for this development is just the start of a long legacy north of the border for us. We'd like to introduce you to our Legart Bray scheme.
I'm Angus Dodds. I'm an associate planning consultant at Savills. From the beginning of the latest local development plan process, Comer have been keen to make representations to each of the successive stages, and they'll also be making a submission at the end of this month to the consultation on the proposed plan. Now, we appreciate that the site was not always supported by officers during the plan's progression, as set out by Scott, but we have tried to work hard to address the various technical points that have been raised to show that the site can come forward. What's really striking about this site, as also alluded by Scott, is that it does essentially straddle two local authorities. Accordingly, the project team's always considered it's really important that we listen to local people in the evolution of our plans, given this slightly unusual context. Ultimately, Comer want to deliver a mix of new homes here to help the city deliver on its housing targets and to introduce Comer to Scotland in a really positive light. I'll pass you over to Des.
Thank you very much, Angus. My name is Des Toomey. I'm Director with Plus Architecture. We are the master planners and architects on the Leggart Bray scheme. I have two slides just to start off. These maybe just to describe in summary form how we would approach any master plan, and this one in particular. First is a process of analysis, as a process of understanding, testing densities and examining existing housing typologies in Aberdeen, getting an understanding on the left-hand side of the screen of materiality, understanding granite, obviously, which is a particular feature in the city, but also renders, bricks, slates, other locally characteristic materials. On the right-hand side, you're seeing kind of the beginning of the process, which is test fitting densities, typologies, housing types onto the site, looking and examining entry points into the site, which became a very notable part of the application pre-consultation. And obviously working with our landscape partners and our engineering partners to understand how to preserve and protect the local ecology, the Den of Leggart, the watercourses, and the utilities as we understand them and develop them through the site. The next slide, if you don't mind moving on, Angus, is a continuation of that process. You're seeing more themes of materials, more themes of density studies and appropriateness studies for the housing, and also how the master plan went through numerous iterations to try and soften the lines, to try to examine and expand on the protection of the green woodland areas within the master plan. And I suppose as we move on to consultation and the technical aspects, which will form later parts of this presentation, integrating those into our work. So, Angus.
Thanks, Des. So on the consultation part, I think despite the COVID restrictions, this didn't alter Comer's commitment to making sure that the consultation on this project is properly consultative and not just a presentation. Accordingly, the website we set up had to be really clear, transparent and easy to navigate. We also wanted to make sure, as you'll see in the bottom right of your screen, that in terms of transparency, the FAQs we put up didn't pull any punches and did give proper answers to the sort of questions we knew people would have. We also tailored the questionnaire in the bottom left to answer questions that would be genuinely useful to help inform the development's design, as we knew that probably only local people would know answers to some of these questions. We're really pleased to note that we got some very clear responses from the public who showed a preference for an access from the D-trunk to A92 and expressed a general concern about the impact of any development on the Den of Leggart. I'll pass over now to Kevin.
Thanks, Angus. My name is Kevin Moyer. I'm the Regional Director for Goodson Associates, who are the civil and transportation engineers on this project. As part of the design development, we've carried out a full review of the access options available for the site. Principally, the possible points of access either from the west via the adjacent rural road network or from the east via the A92. Any access from the west will be from the unclassified rural road, which forms the beginning of the Causey Mouth. As this road lies within the Aberdeenshire Local Authority area, early discussions have taken place with Aberdeenshire Council with regard to the suitability of utilising this road for access. As the road is currently narrow, without footways and constrained by existing houses, alterations are required to bring this road up to standard. These include the widening and construction of a new section of road to bypass the area constrained by existing properties. By doing this, we're able to provide a technically compliant solution which provides safe access to the site. However, unfortunately, this proposal has not been supported by Aberdeenshire Council, principally on the basis that it will involve construction of new roads within the Greenbelt. The second option for access is from the A92, which forms the eastern boundary of the site. Following construction of the AWPR, this road is no longer a trunk road and is now in the control of Aberdeen City Council. There are aspirations through the Aberdeen Active Travel Plan to improve active travel links along this corridor, of which this development could play a part. While this road provides excellent transport links, forming a junction onto a road of this type is not without its challenges and should be considered carefully. Initial discussions with Aberdeen Council road officers have indicated this is not a preferred solution and safety concerns have been raised. While we appreciate and understand these concerns, we feel an appropriately designed signalised junction may in fact enhance road safety in this area, particularly for pedestrians and other active travel users, by providing a safe linkage which does not currently exist. Initial design work has been carried out to show that a technically compliant junction could be formed with sufficient capacity for the development. Further discussion will be required on this, however we're hopeful it's possible that a compliant junction design could be agreed on. So overall, we have a site which can be accessed from both east and west. However, concerns have been raised with the respective councils these are located at. While we'll look to address these concerns where possible, it is also important to consider the views and needs of the local community, hence why this was also included as part of the public consultation. Through this consultation, a clear preference for the A92 access was expressed on the basis of the enhanced connections provide. I'll hand you now back to Des.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, there's three more architectural slides to follow. The first is we're going to talk about the look and feel and appearance of the house types. The second slide is how the master plan evolved following the access examination that Kevin has talked about and the community consultation. And in lieu of our landscape consultants, I'm just going to present a slide of some of the landscape work as well. This page is quite self-explanatory. It talks about how we work. We start at the drawing board, we sketch, we analyse, we look at local themes, proportion and use of material. You're seeing on the top bar, elevational studies and sketch diagram studies that were undertaken, and the result of that on the bottom ribbon, where we see well-composed houses that are smart. There are different sizes to cater for different user demands, the 3 beds, 4 beds, mix of detached and semi-detached, all with good generous open space, nicely planted verges and tree-lined streets. If we were to move on to the next slide, which is the feedback from the community consultation, you're seeing sketches that we evolved subsequent to that and the more hardline version on the right-hand side of where that is going to. You're seeing two main themes really, that we've got full protection of the Den of Legart. There was very strong local feeling that should really be protected in its entirety, which we fully accepted. You're seeing the red ribbon on the left-hand side diagram, which is about connectivity of cycle and pedestrian facilities. I suppose by implication, the denial of a rat run through the site, which was another very strong theme, that the access strategy should make sure that we're not opening up any negative consequence in terms of traffic movement. So I think we're quite settled and happy with the two access strategy. I think it brings a lot of benefits, not least I think the full preservation of a very valuable local green woodland resource. Moving on, I suppose, onto the next slide, which is landscape. In the absence of our landscape consultants, the Den of Legart is being obviously preserved, it's being enhanced, and it's being complemented and augmented with more usable open public parkland space, which will be brought in as part of the development. You're seeing as well on the left-hand side, themes of tree-lined streets, of a priority of streets, of double tree-lined streets, single tree-lined streets on secondary roads, and a very legible, clear diagram and approach to cycle and pedestrian permeability. I just want to add finally, what you're looking at here are earlier landscape studies. They don't fully integrate what I've just talked about, which is the denial of that rat run, but that will be incorporated as the landscape comes to its completion. If you want to wrap up, Angus.
Thanks, Des. Yeah, so in wrapping things up, I realise this is quite a busy slide, but Des had spoken about the benefits. I think this really shows that how this site can actually deliver an awful lot. It's only 2.5 miles from the city centre, but with the emerging access strategy that's come from the community consultation event to try and use the D-trunk to A92, this can be a really transformative active travel junction for the city and the Shire that can help realise the council's ambitions to improve health and well-being, and will also help to link up a whole series of important points within the city's green space network, which are shown in the yellow stars on the slide. And that in turn, I guess, will plug into the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan rollout within the city centre. As new entrants into the local market, Comer can also build very quickly here, as it can begin to start delivering a really exciting and attractive new product for the city within a short time. Councillor Bolton, I'll maybe back to yourself.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, so thank you. if I could take questions now, if you could use the hands bar at the group house. They're all standing. So, oh, we've got Councillor Mackenzie first.
Yes, I don't know this area terribly well, and I wondered if the development would have any impact on the Deeside Way.
I can maybe come in to answer that. I think in terms of immediate impact, Councillor Mackenzie, it's on the south side of the Dee, so it wouldn't have any impact on that particular route.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Avril. Councillor Cook.
Thanks, convener. Thanks, guys, for that very, very helpful presentation. I've got a couple of questions. First one on affordable housing. Would you look to provide 25% affordable housing on site, or would you be looking to make a payment so that an equivalent amount of affordable could be built elsewhere? And also in terms of the design of some of the houses that you showed us, do you have any examples of what the affordable housing on site might look like?
Well, I can answer the second one there, Councillor Cook. Maybe Angus might return on your first point. The second point about what the affordable houses would look like. Yeah, we've done studies on them. We didn't include them on the presentation because we wanted it to be quite summary. They're slightly different to the houses that I showed you in that there'd be a slightly more compact typology. There's also a mix of 1 beds and 2 beds for the affordable component, because we understand that that's where the demand might lie. In terms of percentages and provision on site, maybe Angus might go through that, but it is the intention at the moment that they're being designed into the on-site provision.
Thanks. Sorry, did you want to add to that?
Well, just because I realised Des had sort of teed it up. In some ways, Des has answered the question really. To date, the design as it's evolving is showing affordable housing on site, but since the consultation, we're still doing, or Des' team certainly is doing a lot of work still, finessing stuff. But that's the proposal as it appears to be at the moment.
Is Councillor Cook, have you anything further you want to add up?
Yeah, I've got just 2 more points, convener, if that's okay. You'll have seen in our pack, and it's in the proposed local development plan, we have policy CI1, which relates to provision of broadband infrastructure. Would you be intending to provide for fibre to the cabinet or fibre to the premises?
Do you want me to pick up on that one, guys? Yeah, so generally, hi, Councillor Cook, Jack O'Brien here, Coma Group. Generally, with modern schemes, we look to go to fibre to premises.
Thanks, that's great. And my final question is on flooding. In our pack on page 34, there's a reference to the fact that the area is already at risk of flooding on the SEPA flood risk maps. I know in the development plan it's been designated as an area suitable for housing. Quite how that happened, I'm not sure, but it's not your fault. But how would you look to mitigate flood risk, given that it's already at risk of flooding? And most scientists seem to agree that extreme adverse weather events are simply going to get more frequent in future as a result of climate change.
I can try and answer that.
Yeah, I could also, Angus.
Sorry, yeah, probably that.
Yes, hi, Councillor Cook. As part of the design of development, we are carrying out a flood risk assessment, which is modelling the flood risks which exist on the site, and that is a refinement on what is indicated on the SEPA flood map. So that's going to be something that's going to be incorporated into the design, and we're going to ensure that areas of flooding up to the required storm events, taking climate change increases, will be included in the design of the development.
thanks. That's helpful, and that's me done, I think, at the minute.
Okay, thanks, John. I've got Councillor Stewart, then Councillor Copeland.
Thank you, convener. I just wanted to ask, had you considered the impact on the existing infrastructure, and also 150 houses, that's going to probably have families and children, impact on local schools? Are you going to contribute towards that? Community involvement? Are you thinking about a local shop and expanding on the local infrastructure, bus routes and so on? Have these all part of your considerations and deliberations? Was that all heard?
Yeah, we heard just Councillor Stewart. I'm just waiting for them to decide who would like to answer it.
I can have a.
Okay.
A
bash is good.
Oh, right. Sure. Thanks for the question. Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of schools, because it's in the city, as was pointed out in the presentations, Abbotswell Primary School would be the primary school that the kids would normally be allocated to. And in terms of the overall infrastructure, I mean, the proposed allocation is for 150 houses, so the use is clear from that there's not any proposals at the moment for shops or whatever. But I think one of the interesting points to come out of the community consultation, if the A92 was to be used, it would mean that residents there would have fairly simple access to Kincorth, to there's the post office in Nares McCall and so on. Would actually bring them to pretty close proximity to a network of neighbourhood shops there.
Does that answer your questions, Councillor Stewart?
Partially, and only in the sense that there's quite a lot of interruptions. I didn't get the whole picture. Just and in terms of the sound, what's actually coming through. I did hear about the local shops in Kincorth, but it seems to me 150 houses could generate, well, probably at a minimum, 300 people, maybe more. If I was moving into such an area, it would be a consideration for me, because 150 is actually quite a lot. And it seems to me I would go parallel to that. Are you still there?
Yeah, you're just breaking up a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, so what I would draw a parallel to is the properties that are on the A90, just down from Hillside and before Portlethen, and on the northbound side. I think originally there were just a selection of houses, and now they actually have some shops up there. I think what you're proposing is something similar.
I think you broke up a little bit, yeah. I think we've got some of it. I don't think we got maybe all of it.
Okay, so I'm going to put my camera off to see if that helps in any way at all.
It does, Jennifer.
I've moved the computer around to get a better reception. I'm just thinking long-term strategy. Perhaps shops might have been a consideration for that area. I draw the parallel to Hillside by Portlethen, where there was originally just a housing development, and then there are some local shops there. And from my perspective, I think that there's always an impact on local infrastructure. 150 could be 300 cars, so there's always going to be an impact on roads. It's highlighting it too, but that's my bit. So, but fuller answer would have been better.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. I had Councillor Copeland.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Councillor Stewart partly asked some of the question I was going to ask. You mentioned that Abbotswell would be the primary school. I take it Lochside would be the secondary school for this site. Would that be correct?
Yes, as I understand it, Councillor Copeland, that's correct.
Yeah, right. What about medical facilities? Do we know which medical practice would be the nearest to this? And also, going back to the schools, it's maybe a bit early to this because the application hasn't actually come in yet about school capacities. Can you answer that one?
Sorry, yes, I'm back. I've put headphones on. Hopefully that'll allow any breakup to be sorted out. Yeah, you're right. I mean, in terms of the medical centre, I suppose the closest GP practice, as I understand it, is at Garthdee, which is about half a mile away from the site, albeit across the Bridge of Dee. But then there's also the GP practice at Kincorth Medical Centre, which is, I think I'm correct in saying, kind of in the centre of Kincorth, near the community centre and so on. So again, the A92 crossing would allow future residents to be able to access that. I guess, as with any housing development, that there will be an impact on local services, and we wouldn't want to hide away from that. But I think we'd be confident as a project team at this stage that through the application that goes in, I suppose Scott and his officer colleagues would be able to advise where there would be unforeseen impacts that we'd need to address in due course.
Has that answered you, Councillor Copeland?
Yes, that's fine. I mein, it's still early to education questions. I'll wait for the application to actually come in before that. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Have I got any more questions from members? So I've got one or two. Jennifer, your hand's still up. Do you want to pop it down? Unless you're asking something. Thanks. Has anybody got any other ones before I ask? No. Obviously, we talked about actually there being a health centre and obviously with shopping and leisure facilities over at Garthdee Bridge area. Now, obviously, we've talked a lot about pedestrian and cycle routes. Now, one of the obvious ones is obviously across the river. Now, it's always been an aspiration of the council to be able to facilitate a pedestrian type bridge across that area. Is this something that could be considered for accessibility for the future?
Hi, Councillor Bolton. Will I try and address that one again? Yeah, I think what we did say on the website, and it still holds today, on the FAQs, when we were, or rather in the questionnaire, I think, when we were looking at the question of the bridge, and I do appreciate it's an aspiration to get an active travel link across the Dee. I think just given the scale of the development planned here, we couldn't really justify providing a bridge under this application. It's not going to form part of it. But I think what's become increasingly clear since our discussions with local people at the community event is, the impact that active travel generally can have. It's coming through very clearly from the proposed LDP at the moment. This emphasis on health and well-being, and it's something that I think we could deliver, certainly in terms of a network of paths and routes for cyclists and pedestrians through our site. But you're quite correct to say, in the future, maybe a link across the Dee would be the kind of obvious ultimate outcome of where that could be headed. To go back to the point right at the beginning about the Deeside Way, perhaps that is a much longer term aspiration to link up the two sites.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking, obviously, for pedestrians, given that the majority of facilities are, if you like, on their doorstep, but albeit separated by a river. And I mean, I know that there has been a number of people who have raised concerns about the current bridge with the width of the pavement for people using it on foot, certainly not by cycle. So, I know that certainly that there is a big aspiration, and it's certainly something that people have been considering quite heavily as part of their STAG appraisals for interventions around the Bridge of Dee. So, I think it's just obviously trying to tie in any opportunity we have to make that come to fruition. So just mark it down, I think, I suppose is probably.
Well, I think if I can answer that, Councillor Bolton, I mean, certainly in terms of working side by side with the council, I think COMA would be very happy to try and see how we could work with the council in a constructive way to try and deliver that in the future. But as I say, it wouldn't be part of this application, but it's something we're certainly thinking about.
Okay. Has anybody got any more questions Scott, could I just maybe get you, Councillor Cope and mentioned about obviously, and I think Councillor Stewart as well, about the developers' obligations. Could you maybe just perhaps give councillors a little bit of a flavour of how you'll assess that type of thing?
Yes, certainly. I mean, when the application comes in for the, well, what's understood to be 150 houses, the developer obligations team would assess that in the context of the local area, in terms of the impact of the housing development and the situation in terms of the infrastructure in the area, whether that's primary school capacity, secondary school capacity, and healthcare provision. Also leading on to any improvements that could be made to public open space or the core path network, for example. So there's a list of considerations that would be assessed through the application process to highlight any potential deficiencies and any contributions that the developers could make to mitigate those impacts. So it's really just a bit early to get into any of that detail at this stage, but it will be part of the application process.
I suppose my final point was, we heard a lot about the open space that's going to be there. You know, it's always a concern to councillors when there's a lot of additional new open space in terms of the upkeep of it. So obviously, I think we'd want to hear and see through the application how that was going to be maintained, and whether there was going to be any sort of facilities management charges to the people living in there, or whatever. Because I think, as I say, that is something, as we've been moving through these different developments across the city, that it's become more and more pressing that we understand how these things, they may look nice on day one, but it's how they look nice on day 100, day 1000, and who's got the upkeep. So I think that's probably really critical. And I think as well the fact that, you know, that we really see the affordable housing delivered on site. Again, it's bearing in mind any implications for them, you know, depending on what kind of additional costs, such as facility maintenance for the grounds. So I think it's just those types of things that we'd want to make sure that was addressed. And the only other probably point, and it may be too early for you to answer this, is would you see the affordable housing being together, or would you split them up through the development? I don't know what COMA's usual kind of practice is. Because there's advantageous points on both, because obviously if it was for instance, a registered social landlord at Phuket, they quite like them, as does the council, to be closer together. So from a maintenance point of view and looking after the residents. But obviously what we don't want is, you know, over in that corner, it's very obvious which one are the social or affordable housing. You know, we like it to be, you know, you can't pick them out.
Yeah. Well, Jack, do you want to answer that one? Or?
Yeah, sorry, Des. I mean, Des can talk about the design, Councillor Bolton. But yeah, you're quite right. There is advantages to both, and I don't think there will be an annexing. I think it's quite a nice selection area that's integrated within the overall scheme. But I'll let Des talk about that. But we do have a property management arm. We do retain our freehold. So as far as maintenance is concerned, we generally do that via service charge provision. It's all up front. All the costs are explained up front to the purchasers. I must admit I'd have to look into the affordable housing rules in Scotland, how they work, to make sure that I don't miss the nuance. But that generally the way it works in the UK is there are no additional charges. The rent is, or the rent or the cost is the rent or the cost. I will just stand by, I need to check the nuance with Scottish law. But yeah, there won't be anything hidden for either leaseholders, freeholders, or affordable renters, or shared ownership, whatever the combination ends up being. But yeah, quite right. Having the units together does have some benefits in management and maintenance, and I do see the point. But Des, we can talk to you now about how this isn't an annexed element of the scheme.
That's right, yeah. And I think Councillor Bolton, you probably introduced it well. There's a lot of different views in terms of pepper potting around a development or having them contained within a singular zone. I suppose just as an architect, I can only speak from a design sense. you try to design in a way that is not explicitly exclusionary for the people who come and live in those units. And I think when we come forward with the full detail, I would hope that that is demonstrated, that it's not a case of being in a substandard location or in a substandard quality or elevation or material usage. So no, I don't think the way that we've done it, they would particularly stand out, but they are contained within one zone, that it has a management function of being easy to maintain and manage by whatever body comes on to do that. So that's, and I suppose the provision, the assumption that we're taking them on site as well, I think is probably a good thing. We're not looking to offload that responsibility to a lesser kind of a less good area. So there is commitment there to make sure that they're integrated into the development.
Yeah. Just on the point, I think your colleague before just mentioned, Sir Brian, you mentioned, would you be having your own company managing the affordable rentals or shared ownership? Because
that's a really good question, Councillor Bolton. That's the model that we have adopted in the UK, and there's a number of benefits to that. The fact that we are not just walking away from the development and we have stewardship of it going forward is really, really important to us. We remain a stakeholder throughout the whole process, and we don't just see this as just exactly. This is something we want to be investing in for the future.
Okay, no, I mean that's a really interesting model, because I think it, as you say, it does invest you into the site long term rather than just taking what comes at the start and we never see you again. So no, do
you know what? It's something that is really at the heart of Brian and Luke's, but Brian especially is keen on. He never sells the freeholds as most developers do. He manages them. He really takes care and consideration about his developments, and hence the development of Coma Property Management, and then obviously going out to Dove Park Properties, which is the RSL or affordable housing provider, and he really takes these things seriously in the long term.
That's good to hear. Okay, thank you. Has anybody got any more questions? I might have prompted anything for anyone. No. Oh, sorry, Councillor Copeland.
Yeah, thanks, Camina. Just something that Mr. O'Brien just said. Are you intending to retain the freeholds and be selling or using these properties as leasehold, as they do in England, as opposed to here in Scotland, is usually by freehold? So are you planning to change that?
Very good question. No, if the freehold law in Scotland is that way, we would do it by freehold, and in that case there would be estate charges rather than leasehold charges for the maintenance and upkeep, etc. That's a really good question, and don't think that the nuance of Scottish law, Councillor Copeland, is my main expertise at the moment. I'll be learning fast.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much for that.
Thanks, Neil. Any more questions? No. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming along today and giving us that presentation. Hopefully you found some of our questions helpful, and maybe some of our expectations helpful. Obviously we've heard that you're still working with officers in terms of prior to submitting any sort of application. So I think we'll all just wait and see what comes forward, and hopefully, as I say, you found our contribution helpful today. It is meant to be a constructive process in order to give you our concerns. I think you raised quite a few of them that had been highlighted at the consultation with the wider community. I think obviously things like the burn, the sort of flooding, all of these things are really important to us, and obviously the topography and the views you come into the city, all of these things, we would want to be foremost in your mind as you go forward with the development. So we shall probably leave it at that, and thank you for coming along today.
Councillor Bolton, sorry, we just need to approve the previous minute as well.
Oh, okay, no problem. Do you quickly just pull up, my screen's gone blank, sorry, Lindsay.
That's okay.
Right, get back down to the bottom again. Sorry about this. Just give me 1 sec. Okay. Lindsay, could you remind me? I'm struggling.
Sorry, yeah. Got me just take
Yeah,
it.
please.
Just so the minute of the previous meeting of the 5th of December 2019, just for those present, if you could just approve it as a correct record.
And that was the
That was the elective, no, land south of North East, no, sorry, wrong one. It
Yeah.
was, yeah, land south of North Deeside Road, Miltimber.
Yeah.
That was the application.
Gosh, that seems a long time ago.
No, that was December last year. And we had another one as well. We had
Was that the Grey Fire?
land adjacent to Rubislaw Quarry. So that's been to PDMC since then.
Yeah, approved.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, folks. I don't expect you to remember every detail from then. Okay, thanks very much for coming on.
Thank you very
today,
much.
And you can cease the recording.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
I'll just
Thank you.
finish the recording.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.